Hi, folks, and welcome to Heart and Hand Extra. This is your little bite-size free show from all of us here at Heart and Hand Towers to discuss all things Rangers. My name is Cammy Bell. I'm stepping in for our pod overlord, David Edgar, for this week. And joining me to discuss all things to do with the Hamilton game last night and the upcoming trip to Ross County is my wonderful friend, Mr. Ian Hogg. Ian, I won't ask you how you are because I'm fairly sure I could guess it. I'll ask you if you've calmed down yet.
Calmed down to a minor seethe where I only wish to go rampaging now. Last night was a fucking shit show, mate. And excuse my language throughout this pod. I know there may be children listening.
Yes, I will also add in a bit of a disclaimer there. Parental advisory is, I think, in effect in terms of where our explicit lyrics will come in. Yes, Rangers, having been fairly humbled out of the Scottish Cup last weekend, took to the field to get a result and, more importantly, try and cover some lost ground against Hamilton Accies. That was the expectation, Ian. There was lots of various back and forth following the exit of the Scottish Cup to now, mostly involving the manager. Those rumours were quashed somewhat following the press conference at the beginning of the week, where he renewed his commitment to the club and he was looking to be able to try and move forward with everything. He wanted to be able to try and provide us with a few surprises.
And we got a big surprise. Or maybe it's not that much of a surprise. Who knows? Certainly at the weekend, as much as I don't like to admit it, there was a journalist, and I actually can't remember who it was, that described Steven Gerrard as effectively still being in the body of a captain and a player when he does his post-match interviews, less so pre-match. But when he does his post-match interviews, it's almost as if he's the guy, as Martin Ramsey mentioned earlier on today's Daily Update on Patreon, it's almost as if he comes across as the adrenaline-pumping guy that's run 13 kilometres while some of his teammates haven't. So he's kind of pumped and the passion is there for all to see. Now, there's a fine line between having Roy Hodgson basically doing your post-match to a fully pumped up Jose Mourinho who just wants to destroy the world. In reality, the I would imagine the right mix is somewhere in the middle. And lately, and we've seen it throughout the season, and we've seen it last season as well, when things maybe aren't going so well, and indeed when things are going well, Steven Gerrard can verge into that over-passionate extraordinaire. And we certainly had that on Saturday night when the players were chucked under the bus once again. Incidentally, rightly so, they were shambolic. But the key is chucked under the bus again. And there's only so many times that you can refer to effectively scorch the earth until it's not going to have any more impact. So the big concern off the back of it was how many times has he done that? And also, he's now actively talking about at the weekend reviewing his own position. Now, he did then clarify that on, when was the presser? Monday, when he said, look, you know, it's fine. That's a very short-term thing. Long-term, I'm all in. I'm in for the long ride. And then we get to last night's game and he makes a few changes. You could argue the formation was tinkered with as well, but the changes effectively, a couple forced upon him. Jack and Arfield out, with, from memory, Kamara and Hoggy in, with Aribo dropping back into midfield, and two that he wanted to make, Greg Stewart out and also Ryan Kent dropping to the bench, with Florian Kamberi coming in, Alfredo Morelos coming in, partner and Hoggy in the kind of front three. It was, on the face of it, the changes that people were clamouring for. Ryan Kent had been, maybe Braga second half aside, has been very poor. there had been a clamour for him to be in the bench. Florian Camberry had been relatively good, maybe not so much the start in Braga, but certainly off the bench as an impact player. We've seen at Cammy, and a wee clamour for him to come in, and everyone expected Alfredo Morelos to come back into the fold. And Alfredo Morelos, incidentally, that we may come on to later, who is clearly channeling his inner Marco Negri circa January 1998. So we start the game. I think the first half, actually, we by and large, we do all right. We're not pulling up trees, but we're not dog shit either. We do all right. We just cannot get that breakthrough. We have several good chances. In the total match, I think it should be remiss to say with 31 attempts and goal and 9 on target. But it's not as if it was just an unlucky game. It's yet another. So we get to half time. There is that gnawing feeling, Cammy, of for all we've dominated, here we are again. Is it going to be? Is it going to be our night?
Well, this is what's interesting, I think, because there's another stat which has been kind of going around as well, Ian, which I find particularly concerning. That I believe of 15 of our last 16 matches, we've failed to score in the first 30 minutes of said matches. Now, there's and you and I love pieces of context. There are pieces of context involved within that, because those obviously involve a lack of Alfredo Morelos, either through self-serve suspension or disciplinary issues. Greg Stewart, who I am not sold on whatsoever. I haven't ever really been sold on him, and I think it's been proven correct in terms of what you've seen, especially in the last few weeks. Florian Camberry has come in, has probably done okay, I think, in terms of some aspects of it. And really from striking options, that's pretty much about it. What we've also seen, probably more habitually, is Rangers not starting well. Certainly the scoring stats would present that. Going in at half-time and then coming back out all guns blazing. And if one thing that the manager could hang his hat on was that he was able to rally them at half-time and come out and get a performance from them, that is now no longer happening. I think the comparisons of Alfredo Morelos and Marco Negri are absolutely spot on the money. Morelos is unfit. He's overweight. I'm happy to put the disciplinary process of him being unable to prepare in time adequately by coming back to the UK with sufficient time, as he was visiting his mother in Colombia, who is rumoured to be very, very unwell. The manager excluded him for that reason, explained in Tuesday's press conference that was the reason for it, and it's now behind us and we deal with it. Morelos himself publicly apologised. I thought, personally speaking, looked sharper in terms of what he'd done in the last few weeks. Was very unlucky hitting the bar. But it got to the 60th minute, Ian, where we had a bit of a collective brain fart, however, none more so than Connor Goldson, who almost inexplicably, for some reason, when the ball was coming towards him, James Tavernier was running with facing his own goal. So at that point, Goldson had the option of being able to try and clear it. Seemed to just bring the ball under control, rotate 180 degrees, look to be able to, for what I think, potentially play it back to Conor McGregor, which would have been a stupid thing to do, given that Goldson was in his own box at the time anyway. David Mayo from Accies nipped in and just stabbed the foot past him. Because McGregor's not expecting it, it goes by McGregor's left-hand post. Accies are 1-0 up, and despite what was happening through in Livingston with Celtic trailing, we conceded yet more ground in the league. And I think it's fair to say, Ian, that as soon as that goal went in, pretty much everybody in Ibrox, which wasn't in any way full, pretty much felt that was it.
Yeah. So, a few things to unpack. You're right. I think the first half of the season, we were scoring lots of goals early and lots of goals late on. We were fairly controlled. We weren't rabbit in the headlights. We weren't desperation stakes. Now, with what we've seen in 2020, we've played 9 league matches. We've won 4. 4 out of 9. We've gone from 50 points out of 57 to, 15 out of 27. That's a monumental drop-off. And bang on the money, Cammy. Except it's Alan McGregor in goals and not the aforementioned UFC fighter Conor McGregor.
I'm sorry.
although
Well, I can at least bring Conor McGregor in. Why not? We've conceded enough.
I would play Conor McGregor at centre half if he wasn't one of them. And I mean Celtic fan by that, clearly. So, yeah, the whole defending was rancid. And again, we've seen that before. Myself and Martin talked about earlier. There is no way on earth that Connor Goldson makes that move against Braga last week in Portugal. None whatsoever. It's cleared. It's out of danger. It's set yourself back up. It's get your formation, get your shape back, get the spine of the team reorganised. Meanwhile, what we had last night was largely James Tavernier saying, after you, Connor. And Connor saying, no, James, after you. And then try to take charge, taking control of the ball, and try to do some kind of Cruyff drag back. The guy nips in, gets the ball, sticks it past Alan's pal Conor McGregor, and they've scored. And I don't think it's McGregor's fault in any way. You know, it happens so fast. He's not going to be able to react to that. It's solely on Connor Goldson and perhaps to a lesser extent James Tavernier. Defenders defend, clear the danger. You know, it's almost a case of Hamilton are beneath us and therefore we should be able to do this. Actually, we're at 0-0 in what's turning out to be a fairly crucial game because, like it or not, if Celtic drew last night, Rangers win last night, it's down to 10 points, game in hand, hopefully 7. They're coming up 2 games' time. It's not quite game on, but it's more doable than it was at kickoff. So we're into dereliction of duty mode, to be honest, Cammy. The way that the likes of Goldson dealt with that last night, it was shambolic. And you're right, from there on in, because of what's happened in 2020, and you've now got the players actively talking about it around, we prefer to be the underdogs and blah, blah, blah. In that Ibrox toxicity, really, you had a set of players who visibly shrank. Now, I know we had chances, and I know we had good chances, but those good chances were largely maybe from mistakes and less so fashioned, because in that last half hour, we then shrank into ourselves and went back to passing side to side to side, get it out wide, try a wee trick or a wee turn back into traffic and wait until there's 3 players around us, and then attempt to cross the ball into the box where we've got 5'8" Jermaine Defoe in the middle. It's predictable. It's as predictable as it is pathetic and vice versa. In that last half hour, you were looking at a team with no leadership, no discernible leadership, with no spine, with no heart, with no bravery, with no one willing. Maybe Aribo and Hadji aside, to be honest, no willingness to take the ball and try and do something and make a difference. And for me, I'm going to pick on an individual player. This is grossly unfair, right, Cammy? Because the guy's a kind of reserve player trying to find his way at Ibrox. But for me, really, a big example was Brandon Barker comes on to make a difference with 15 minutes to go. He tried his heart out. He really did. And what did he do? He ran up the line, turned one way, turned another, turned back into traffic and hit the first man. You're just thinking, fuck me. More of the same, more of this, frankly, cowardly shite. And that last half hour was, as I say, as predictable as it was pathetic.
I'll come back on to mentality in just a second because I do want to address that specifically. But in order to probably dovetail what you've said, I'll go slightly opposite. And I will pick on someone, and I don't care if being harsh because it's deserved, who is a regular in the side, and that is Goldson himself. Now, what I want to come back to just very, very quickly, since we have to regurgitate what happened against Hearts. One of the get out of jail scenarios that we had on Saturday's game against Hearts was, you'll remember Ian, a bouncing ball on our 18-yard line. Connor Goldson is about to shell it. Here's a shout from George Edmondson. Edmondson completely misjudges the ball. It hits the back of his heel and provides a wonderful through ball to Stephen Naismith. And we're fortunate not to have a second goal scored against us. Last night, what you saw within some of that as well was a lack of responsibility in terms of dealing with the ball, being able to get it out of there, and we are causing our own downfall by making quite blatant, quite clear errors where Connor Goldson's not clearing it, James Tavernier's not clearing it, Alan McGregor I will give a bye to because I don't think he was involved in that whatsoever. It's not his fault. But Goldson now is one of the trusted lieutenants. He's undroppable, blah, 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 what have you. The mistakes that he's making now, as far as I'm concerned, and I'm going to blame Goldson for what happened against Hearts, because not necessarily because I want to protect Edmondson, but you and I play centre-half together. If I'm the senior player and I'm clearing the ball, you get out my way. It's that simple. You and I have played football long enough together that you know that you have to be able to try and make sure there's a clear definition of communication there. And as far as I'm concerned, Connor Goldson didn't do that when he left the ball to Edmondson against Hearts. And God alone knows what he was thinking last night, because it was ridiculous. And he gives his goalkeeper no chance. In fact, you could put Connor and Alan McGregor both in goals last night, and it probably still would have conceded. But coming on to the mentality. Now, there was comments that were made by James Tavernier in the match programme last night. And this is something which I'm not wanting to fixate on, but I do think is worth mentioning, where the captain in his own programme notes has said that he's aware of where our shortfalls are and we're aware of it as a team. Now, there's not necessarily something wrong with that per se, but when you come out of an absolute arse feeling against Hearts, which is what happened to us, because we're not talking about a smash and grab by Hearts here, by the way. We were absolutely terrible at Tynecastle. Man to man, they were collectively pish. So we know that we're not playing well. So we have to use this game against Hamilton in order to try and, get into a better place, to be able to try and regroup. Let's circle the wagons. Let's get a bit of unity in there. And in his own programme notes, he already sets up to say, we know that teams have got wise to this now. Now, firstly, I can't believe that he said that. I can't believe he was allowed to print. A major issue and mistake by Rangers. But what it signified to me and what I'm seeing from the body language and the mistake last night by Goldson, the mistake on Saturday by Tavernier, it feels to me that these players now believe that they're victims. They believe that, something's gone wrong, blah, blah, but they're not taking the accountability and the ownership to fix it. And whilst we wallow in this undeserved self-pity, I don't believe we'll move forward. I really genuinely don't. And I think if you say that publicly, if you put it in match notes, if you look at it from a body language perspective and you make errors, you're forced into mistakes by teams at the bottom of the division. You are creating your own problems, and no one, and I'll include everyone in that playing staff, some guys in there with years and years and years of experience, international captains, wants to take responsibility for this. No one is in that playing squad right now. From a winning mentality, it says, listen, yes, we're in the doldrums, but everyone here needs to step it up a gear and then take it further forward. And I don't want to go down the whole scorched earth and we have to start everything again. But these guys now show it's easy in Europe because they don't have the pressure on them, so therefore they feel free to express themselves. But yet domestically, it's fine to be able to come and press us because, as you mentioned beforehand, we were scoring quite freely. Teams have got wise to, okay, that's fine, so what are you going to do about it? And now it's a woe is me type mentality, which is unacceptable. And it's unacceptable to fans who pay thousands of pounds a season, because our fans will go everywhere. They will go everywhere in Europe. I've went into Europe this season. And as this league campaign continues, it's 40 quid a ticket, it's 50 quid a ticket at home. It's air travel, it's buses, it's various other things as well. These players look like as if they couldn't care less about what the fans have to go through at the moment.
And I'm sure that's not the case, incidentally. I'm sure the players do care about what the fans think. But when you've got... Let's look at those two guys that you've talked about, the two guys who effectively caused the mistake last night. Start off with Connor Goldson. Connor Goldson was a Premier League defender. Now, he didn't have an English Premier League defender. He didn't have very many appearances, but he was a defender for Brighton and Hove Albion. We bought him for a reasonable amount of money. You know, it wasn't earth-shattering, but he's one of the highest earners of the club. That's beyond a shadow of a doubt. One thing he should be able to do is defend. Now, we know he can. And I think that's why, actually, maybe compared to previous seasons, Cammy, that's why we are angrier. Because we know this lot have got it, technically. My old man last night texted me and basically said, technically they've got it, but mentally there's a living Rob Kiernan's in the park. Now, I don't think he was that wrong, to be honest. That you take the likes of a Connor Goldson, technically and defensively, he can be superb. I give you Braga versus Rangers. Last night, it's mind fart zone. It really is. It's proper Rob Kiernan zone. And he would never, ever, ever have tried that against Braga away, which makes me think either he's been told he can take more risks in the Scottish Premier Football League, or whatever the fuck it's called, or he feels he doesn't have to concentrate enough and he can overplay and almost take Hamilton for granted. Then we get into a James Tavernier. Now, I'm by and large, Cammy, I'm a Tav fan. I didn't used to be. Take the likes of February 2017 when he kept on fucking up at Tynecastle. Groundhog Day, just saying. I wasn't a particular fan, but then we sorted the shape and all the rest of it, and he's getting caught out less. And in the first half of the season, he's magnificent going forward. Second half of the season, certainly not so much. And when he's off his game, Jesus, he can be off it. And I look at the comments, and the comments in isolation, okay, you know, you can maybe buy them. But after Ryan Kent's comments, you're then thinking, do you know what? That's our club captain. Our club captain's basically saying, in print, we've been found out and we're shiting it a little bit because we want to be the underdogs. Now, I'm paraphrasing, of course, but that's what I took from it. And the biggest fear I've had with Tav as a club captain all along, right from the start, right from when Steven Gerrard said, you're my guy, you were the guy in the dressing room as a captain, you're my guy now, is that, like it or not, we've got a serial loser as a club captain. Because he is. He's been through every sort of mental torture with Rangers under a whole variety of managers. Now, great, 10 out of 10, he's stuck in there. He's threatened to come out the other side. And then when the going gets tough, he starts writing about how tough it is in print. Now, yeah, it's nice that you're showing your feelings and all the rest of it. Keep that in-house and fucking well sort it out. It's the same as Ryan Kent last week. We prefer to be the underdogs. Well, maybe you didn't quite mean it like that. Actually, I think he did. But I'm afraid you're going to have to wise up. We're Rangers, the biggest club in the country, the most successful football club in the world. If you cannot handle it, there's the door. No one's stopping you. There's the door. And I expect, Cammy, in the summer, whether or not Gerrard's still around, I expect a reasonable turnover of players because too much trust has been placed in these players, and they've simply shown that when the going gets tough at the business end of the season, they cannot be trusted.
Well, let's talk about that at the moment then, because I think we need to look forward to Ross County. The song which is playing over my head at the moment is the Backman Turner Overdrive of You Ain't Seen Nothing Yet. So hopefully my hope is at the moment that Rangers won't decide to drop another bollock up in Dingwall. However, you know, we don't trust them not to, so we'll see what happens. Well, let's talk about that because the next game, I feel like we could just repeat this from the flagship show at the beginning of the week where we're saying we've got an opportunity for the game coming up to right some wrongs. So let's do the second version of that. We're away to Dingwall on Sunday. I guess a Ross County team who are inevitably higher up in the division than both Hamilton and Hearts. Here's a big question for you. You are the manager of Rangers, Ian. Do you drop Connor Goldson?
Do you know what? Yeah, I do, because he deserves to be dropped, and he deserves to be treated in the same light as Nikola Katic and George Edmondson have been. Nikola Katic makes one or two mistakes, you don't see him for dust. George Edmondson comes in, has a couple of good games, one bad game, you don't see him for dust. Connor Goldson, trusted lieutenant, can make mistakes, and he's still in the team. So I would be inclined to start Edmondson and Katic.
So I agree. I would drop him. There's a point to this where I think that we need to be able to go out and show that maybe if it's going to help him or give him a bit of a rest or whatever, or get him to regroup mentally, then we'll take it from there. I am similar to yourself. I'm still in the Steven Gerrard camp, although he's doing everything he can to get me out of it. My gut feeling just now is that we can still get a result against Ross County. I think we've got huge games coming up of a Celtic game sandwiched in between two Bayer Leverkusen games. And we need to be able to try and obviously get results in all of these games, purely for pride, if nothing else, because Bayer are a very, very good team. Celtic will certainly smell blood, so they'll look to be able to get it. That's us 3 games further on. There's a growing dissent around the camp around the keeping Gerrard in place this now or giving him the rest of the season and allowing him to rebuild. I think, and David Edgar has said this across our last few pods and since Hamilton and certainly again last night, that once you've lost Rangers fans, it's incredibly difficult to recover them. I think even if he went on a fairly solid domestic run, probably even beating Celtic at that point, which fundamentally is redundant now anyway, because all it would do is lessen the gap between us, but they would still win the league. A decent account of ourselves in Europe, then I think he stays, then I think it gives us the option to rebuild and bring in new players, again, potentially get rid of Tavernier, or even remove him from the captaincy burden and readdressing that whole situation. So a complete overhaul. But there is also the point, Ian, that if we get rid of him now, because let's say we lose to Ross County on Sunday, we're heavily humiliated in both the Leverkusen and Celtic games. I think he loses the last of the goodwill that he has, and I think he has to go at that stage, is my own personal thoughts.
Yeah, the only manager that I think in my living history that has regained the trust of most of the fans, because it was never all of the fans, was Alex McLeish. He had a wonderful first 18 months. His second full season was shambolic. A lot of that due to fire sales. And of course he made it up then with Helicopter Sunday. Of course he did. And then very quickly extinguished it the following season and was out the door. Gerrard, I think you're right, because we've talked long and hard in 2020 about the next game's a pivotal game, or the next game's the one to make it up. We lose to Hearts on the 26th of January. We've got to beat Ross County. We did, and then we drew with Aberdeen. So we've got to beat Hibs, and we did in the last minute, incidentally, so it could have been worse. And we've got to get by Hamilton. Great, we've got there. And then we fuck it up at Rugby Park. So we've got to beat Livingston, and would love to beat Braga. And we did, ultimately. And Braga should have been one of those, right, that's a proper turning point. There's a team who were in the doldrums, and they sorted themselves out in the last half hour, and they drove on, they smelt blood, they got the win. And then we drew with St Johnstone. And then we beat Braga away with one of the most complete away performances I have ever seen from a Rangers team in Europe against the best team in form-wise in Portugal. And we think, right, that's another pivotal moment. Then we get beat by Hearts. Then we get beat by Hamilton. We've had this since the end of January. And there's what 3 or 4 times that I've just talked about right. That's the key moment. So for Gerrard right now, his issue is it's on the day recording, the 5th of March. So there's still 2.5 months of the season to go, which is a long time when you're treading water, Cammy. If there was 5 games to go, fine, you just see it out. But 2.5 months is a long time. Now, you've outlined a scenario there which is dog shit, let's face it. It could go the other way. We could beat Ross County, we could beat Leverkusen, we could trounce Celtic, and we're going into the Leverkusen game high as a kite into Germany. Probably just from the drugs from the coronavirus. So we've got a dilemma. As a club, I think Steven Gerrard and the board and Ross Wilson have a dilemma. They've got one of 3 options. They either stick and hope, because at the minute it's hope. I'm seeing very little, maybe Braga aside, very little evidence of we can turn this around short term. So it's stick and hope, or then you're into replace the management team options. Do you replace? And I saw plenty of clamour of that on Twitter last night. And immediately you said to me, well, replace him with who? And I kind of took the coward's way out and went, well, that's Ross Wilson's job. But you've really got 2 options. Replace short term to the summer and then sort it in the summer. And we're into massive overhaul and so on. Or you replace now long term and you're fishing in quite a shallow pool, let's face it. You're looking at guys who are basically out of job. And there's plenty of them around. Let's not kid ourselves on. But I'd be fucking terrified of Neil Warnock, that's for sure. So I think there's your options. And it's incumbent right now on Ross Wilson, the board, and Steven Gerrard to be honest with themselves and say, right, do we think we can turn this around? If so, how? What mechanisms are we going to use to turn it around? And frankly, Ross Wilson, who is the de facto head of football operations and therefore the boss, really. Ross, do you believe it? Do you believe that those mechanisms can turn things around? Because, as I say, in the year of 2020, I'm not seeing very much evidence of it at all, Cammy.
No, I agree with that. And I think there's probably a lot of foundations that have to be able to try and get laid. I'm not necessarily willing to put this all at Ross Wilson's door at the moment because I don't believe that he's had sufficient time in the job to be able to try and do this. And he certainly wouldn't have come into this job with the expectancy that he would have to replace the management team so quickly. Because we're not talking about one man, we're talking about a number of people that he would end up having to replace. So that's I think a contingency that he's going to have to, if he hasn't already, get very quickly prepared for.
It's a big ask, Cammy. It is a big ask, but sadly, the guy's on a lot of money. That's the job. So,
absolutely. Listen, it's his responsibility, and he knew that coming into it. That listen, managers leave of one of 2 ways. They either leave because they've been sacked, or they leave because they've been poached. But you have to set in a contingency, and that's the whole point of that role. That there's no disruption to the footballing operation when that inevitably happens. Okay, Ian, let's take a trip down positive avenue. We're going to win against Ross County. How much are we going to win by?
I think we'll sneak a 2-1.
A 2-1, probably a last minute winner.
A 2-1 with my arse making buttons.
I'll go for a 2-0. I'll say that we'll keep a clean sheet with I would go with Katic and Edmondson this weekend. They'll keep a clean sheet. Hopefully, Tav's injury, he obviously went off last night. Hopefully it isn't too bad. Rangers didn't reveal any updates so far because we're still waiting on the Ross County press conference, which will be towards the latter part of the week. And we'll find out some more details on that. It will be tomorrow likely. But again, as I say, I would be confident with either Matt Polster coming back into it potentially. Nathan Patterson as well. But that's it from us for this week from Heart and Hand. If you've liked what you've heard so far today, and the fact that I can't even differentiate between Conor McGregor and Al McGregor, please feel free to jump onto our Patreon site that we were discussing earlier on. Hoggy had an excellent daily update with Martin Ramsey earlier. But there's a whole host of shows on there that you can get. If you go on to patreon.com /Heart and Hand, you'll be able to get loads more access to content in this, and some of it might be quite uplifting as well, in terms of providing you with a little bit of a laugh around various things about to do with life, as well as tons and tons and tons of Rangers content in there. If you're still in love with the club, which I think we all are, but my God, they're testing us, Ian.
We all are. We love our club. We love our club too much sometimes. We're all massively, massively invested. And that's why it hurts a little bit, but we will never stop.
Absolutely. Well, listen, thank you very much to my guest for today, Mr. Ian Hogg.
Pleasure, mate. And yes, Rangers, go to Dingwall and fucking will win.
Absolutely. And just to thank your executive producers in London, Mr. Paul Lee and Mr. McMyers. My name is Cammy Bell. Thank you much for your time. We will be back with the flagship show on Monday. We will be discussing that win over Ross County. And I hope you have a great weekend, Bears, and the Rangers get a result for you on Sunday afternoon. Thanks now. Bye-bye.
That was a Heart and Hand production.